Hi folks, welcome back. So in the previous video, we talked about, basically the template functions and then what are the different functions list provided by the Helm, and then we even talked about flow control, and we discussed in detail, by extending our chat further with the help of an HPA example. We explained the flow control and then even the function stuff as well with the especially the behavior of default function and all those things. So in this particular video, we'll talk about the name templates and even the subcharts and the global values. So I'm combining these two topics in one shot because they're totally like for example, if I need to give you the example of name template, some places I might have mixed the concept of global values and subcharts. So I thought to combine these two in one shot, it is easy to understand because like the examples which I'm carrying, right, it contains the combination of both. So that is the reason why. So if you remember, initially when I when I created the Helm chart, I mean, okay, let's do one thing. Let's create a particular Helm chart once again. So what we will do is Helm create new chart. So if you see here, when I created a Helm chart, it has created these many things and all. I was talking to you about this charts directory because this is the place where we will be mentioning about the dependency charts. It is also called as a subcharts. So which we will be touch base, we will be discussing in this particular video. Also inside a templates, you have seen this special file called as underscore helpus.tpl. So what is this underscores dot helpus.tpl file, and what exactly it is doing and all those things we will be discussing in this particular video. So what we will do is, let me take an example straight away and then explain this. Before that, let me go to the documentation and especially this name template. So if you remember in the flow control, I was talking about the if else statements, and also I mentioned like in addition to this way with range and all, you have a few action for declaring and using the name template segments. Those are called as the define, template, and block. Basically, with the help of this define, we can declare a new name template. Basically, a sub template, we can say template within a template. And then how you can, import this sub template within a template. That can be done with the help of template command. Also, you can nowadays, people use more a new command. I mean, the new stuff called as an include, which we are, which we'll be mostly discussing in detail rather than template itself, because Helm itself recommends to use include rather than template. If you go and see in the name template at the end, if you see here, this is considerably preferred to use include over a template. That is the reason why I'm stressing more on the include portion itself rather than template. Don't worry, what is this include template and all, which we are going to discuss in detail now. So if you go back to the functions, sorry, the control list here, which is here. So we will be, discussing this in detail. And then if you come to subchats, so like chat within a chat. So if you see here, this is the chat. Within the chats directory, I'll be creating my subchats and then how I can leverage those. And there is a concept of global values where you can declare whatever under the global name that can be used everywhere with for all the subchats and your parent chat and all. So, again, the subcharts will not have any capacity to modify the parent chart and all. So, when you are using the global values, so again, don't worry about the global values. I'll be explaining that in in detail, and then we'll come here and read all these things in detail. Then you will understand. So, let's quickly jump into one particular example. So what I'll do is again, this repo I have made it as public in my repo, which I'll be giving when I release this video in detail, the complete link details and how you can clone and all. These are tested examples. 100% it will work. If something is not working, always you can get back to me. I'll make it work. Or by this time you already have the knowledge about Helm, you yourself can troubleshoot and make it work. Because I'm sure by this time you already have that kind of a knowledge where you can write your own template with the help of all these things. So if let me take the example of this name template. If I go here inside a chart, this is again a typical definition of a chart where you the API version, the chart name, description, the kind the type is like an application version and API version and all. And then inside a value.yaml, I have defined a couple of values like replica count, the image section, service, the ingress, and labels and all. So now, if you go to templates, this is what the special type of file which I was talking about starts with underscore helpers.tpl. Okay, let me tell you one thing here. So usually when you do Helm install or Helm upgrade, what are all the files which are present inside the templates directory usually will be rendered except nodes.txt and anything which you defined with underscore helpers or underscore something like that. Any files which begins with underscore, because these will be ignored by Helm when it renders the manifest. So you need to remember these things. So in this example, when you run the Helm install, it will be referring only your deployment.yaml, ingress.yaml, service.yaml, not your underscore helpers and not your the nodes.txt. So what is the role of this node.txt? When I install this or when I upgrade this Helm chart, it will display these commands. What and all it will display. For example, if you see in one of the example, okay, what is the example name? Helm name template, right? So if you see here, this is Helm name template. When I did the dry run, you can see I just put the usage of this Helm chart, like this is how you can install, and once you have installed successfully you can check something like this. It's just an useful information. You can write it here about this chart, basically how to install, and once you have installed what are the steps you can include, all those things that you can display inside the node.txt. So if you remember in the first video I was talking about when you create a typical chart, what are all the files will be present inside that. At that time I have told you that I will be explaining about this underscores helpers and nodes.txt in upcoming lectures. So this is where it gives much more significance for you. It will be ignored while rendering, and all it gives you is the information what it is going to display when it installs this chart or upgrades this chart. Now let's come to the important portion, which is underscore helpers.tpl. So what is this? So this is a special file which is given by the Helm, where you can include a template within a template. So as I was mentioning you, the a special kind of a class which is in a define. So now what I'm doing is I'm defining a stuff here like define nginx. You can treat as a variable, maybe a define nginx full name. Okay, so this will be my a function. Maybe you can treat as a function for for time being. So just for understanding purpose, I'm defining nginx full name. Whenever I'm calling nginx full name, that means I'm referring to this. What is that? It's like release name hyphen nginx. My nginx full name is displaying this. What is my nginx full name is? It is just giving me the template for my, this is how my chart should look like. That means the release name hyphen nginx. If you go to deployment, you can see here I'm including this with the help of a special function called include. Include nginx full name, which is going to replace when I do install, it is going to replace this with release name dot nginx. So this is not just specific to deployment. Anything you defined within this chart, everything will be referred with this. That's why it goes beyond, and it ensures that within template, whatever the steps you have defined, all the resources everywhere, it has a capacity of replacing it. Similarly, I have defined the common labels. So for that, I am defining a function again, nginx labels. So what I am defining? I am defining the labels which is common for your deployment, your ingress, your service, everything. So app name for that label will be nginx, and the release name would be release name, and then the environment. If you see here, whatever the value present inside your value.yaml, which is like dev. If at all this is not defined, then you go back and by default refer it as a prod. You can see here again. That is why I said everything is interrelated. In the previous video I discussed about functions, right? So you can see the usage of function here again. Similarly, the image. So I'm just referring it as nginx image. Whenever I give include nginx image, that means I'm including this. That means it is referring to value.image.repository colon value.image.tag. Basically this. So now if you go to the deployment, you can see here include nginx. How simple it is, Similarly, labels include nginx labels. Again, this is one more function. What it does, you can always go back to your, I think I opened it in a separate tab. Yeah, so what is this? Indent. Basically, it isn't for indentation, but still, you can, go back and search here. Okay, so which is, I think this. If you go here, indent function is same as indent function, but prefers a new line to the beginning of the string. Simple. So if you see here indent 4 and this, the above line will indent every line of text by 4 space characters. So that is what it is going to do. This one. So which again we will see when we do dry run, right? We will come to know. So again, it's not just restricted to your deployment. Even if you go to ingress here as well, here if you see, I am using here control statement as well, flow control as well. If my ingress is enabled, where it is controlled? Here. If it is true, then only you do this. If it is false, it will not work. Again, I'm repeating the control statement which I explained in the previous. So it's like now that you already know, it is very easy to understand. Here as well, the release, how I'm doing. I again, what I'm doing is include nginx full name. What it is going to include? If you go here, it is just giving you the release name hyphen nginx. Now first, ingress, I'm appending further nginx, like release name hyphen nginx hyphen ingress. Super, right? I can control it further. Similarly here, if you see here, I'm using one more function here, range. Range value dot ingress dash hosts. So if you go to here, how many hosts I have? Value dot I have 2. So this is like for loop. So for each of these hosts, what I'm doing here, ingress, I'm defining this HTTP path. So okay, let me go to this example, which is maybe when I do Helm install dry run, right? You will understand it in detail. Helm install. So what I'll do, what is the chat name? The chat name is Nginx chat. This is basically the release name. Now what I'll do, what is that I'm trying? Helm template, right? Now rather than install, I'll just do dry run. Let's give a couple of seconds. There you go. If you see here, so first let's see the service definition. Now what is there in my service? Let's go back to service. The name of the service, it's saying include Nginx full name. What is Nginx full name? Is my release name hyphen Nginx. You can see here release name which is Nginx chat, that is what I have given hyphen Nginx. So it is able to render. Now if you go to further in the service.yaml labels, entire labels, what I'm doing include and then indent 4 spaces, right? So in including labels, what is that I have defined? My label should include app nginx, release and release name, and then environment. If you don't define, it should be prod. If you define, whatever the value you define. So what I have defined, environment is dev. You can see here release, okay, and then this one. Oh, sorry, where it is? Here, release nginx chat, and then this one. It's working, right? That's good. Now, if you go further with the deployment, right? Same thing. So if you go to deployment, wherever it is, everything it is. Now comes the interesting part of ingress. I'm using the range function, right? So now if you see here, range, as I said, it is adding 2 different host entries here. So that is what it is doing, right? So I'll repeat. Please, focus here. So what I'm doing here inside the value, but ingress, I'm defining host. I want this ingress to be exposed for 2 different hosts, nginx local and dev.nginx local. So for that, what I have written in nginx, I'm using this range function, which is one more example which I'm giving the explanation here. For the host, okay, for the hosts, whatever. So here if you see for range, so that host for first entry when it iterates, it will get this one. For the next iteration, it will get this one, right? So if you go to ingress here, what you do is add this, which is like HTTP path prefix include Nginx full name. Once again, it will give you a release name and then whatever it is present in the port, port 80. So that is what it is doing here. So that is what the range function does. So let me try to conclude what we have understood here. I mean what we have learned here. So the first thing is we try to understand what are these name templates. Usually these name templates are created with the help of a special file called underscore templates, sorry, underscore helpers.tpl, which is this underscore helpers.tpl, and this is where we define a sub template, a template within a template, which can be globally used within that template section for all the files. How we can use it, we saw that. And also we touch based upon the include function here, whatever we defined, how we can include that inside the deployment, ingress, service, and basically the entire the K8 resources. And then we also learned about the range function, especially in the value.yaml we defined for two different hosts, how we can set up this ingress. Then the corresponding definition as well, how to put it, that also we learned. And also we touch based upon the control statements here as well, flow control. Even we have already learned that in the previous session, but how effectively it is used in the real time scenario as well we learned. So I hope this is clear. Now let's go to the subcharts. So if you see here the subchart example, so let's try to understand what exactly it is doing. So as I told you, right, the subcharts, you will have one more directory called charts. Within that, you will have subcharts. So in my example, I have two subcharts. One is the metrics explorer charts. By itself, it's a it's a chart itself by independently. And then Redis, this also independently a chart itself. So which has its own template, which has its own chart.yaml, it has its own value.yaml. Similarly, here in the metrics explorer, it has its own template, okay, and then it has its own chart, it has its own value.yaml, right? So now let's go here, and also here there is a value, right? Here what I have done, I have defined a global variables. So what are these global variables? So the global variable usually defined with a name called global. So whatever you define inside this, right, that will be used not only for this template section but also for all other subcharts. Basically under the charts, whatever the subcharts you defined, even those can be those can also use this, those can also leverage the values defined inside this global. You need to remember one thing here, these subcharts will never override the values which are present inside this global. They can just use it, then they can never override any of the parent values. That is the reason why. Now let's go back to this subcharts and global. So before we dive into code, there are few important details we need to learn about subcharts. A subchart is considered as a standalone, which means this by default this itself as a chart, which means subchart can never explicitly depend on its parent chart. That is what I meant. That means it's a separate chart itself. However, the parent chart is referencing that subcharts. Okay, I'll give you a real world example. Let's define, you have defined, you have written a microservices for front end and back end. So your back end, right, your back end, which is connecting to database, we have written all the secrets, config maps and everything. At the same time, if back end is doing some sort of caching, for that it requires Redis. So what you're doing is in the back end Helm chart, you inside the chart section, you are installing a Redis, and that you are referencing inside your the template section of the backend. That means your code is requiring a Redis, that's a dependency, which again a separate Helm chart, which you are installing inside keeping inside a charts directory and installing it separately. That's the real world example. So for that reason, subcharts cannot access the value of its parent. Only whatever you define inside a global can be accessed. That is what that is the reason why you define it as a global. They cannot access these values. So one more thing here where it is. one more point which you need to consider here is a parent chart can override the values of subchart. However, the Helm has a concept of global values that can be accessed by all the charts. So now let's see this example, this particular example. So if you see here, my parent charts, again, I'm using the helpers.tpl. What I'm doing, Nginx full name means your release name hyphen Nginx. Similarly, the common variables, common labels like Nginx labels, which your app, release name, environment, and then managed by value.globals.level.managed by. What is this managed by class is, which is Helm. So this is a common variable which you are putting, right? Now, if you go to the charts, I know section. Also, one more thing you have to remember here is charts.yaml. So if you see here, I'm introducing a new stuff here, which is called dependencies. That means this chart is dependent on these two subcharts. So first chart is your Redis chart, the version of that chart, which is again you can find out inside that chart, which is 1.00. That is what I am mentioned, here, right? And then the repository, which is like inside this charts Redis. Within the charts, the repository name is Redis. Similarly, the charts metrics explorer, right? That version also I mentioned here. Now let's go to that particular chart Redis. So here again, this is independent chart. It will have its own chart version, blah blah everything. Then the values here, I'm just giving the storage as 500 milli. And then if I go to the Redis deployment as such, you can see here some of the values I'm getting from my global. The environment, right? What I am doing, value dot global dot environment. So what is there in my value section? Value dot global dot environment, which is production. So my Helm deployment will be getting this environment as production, right? Rest of the stuff specific to this Redis. Similarly, here if I go to metric explorer and there if I go to deployment.yml, here as well I'm doing this. And also I put one more conditional statement. If value dot global dot metrics exporter enabled, if it is set to true, then only you enable. If not, you don't. I think I have used this also somewhere. I can show you that as well, that example. Somewhere I think I have used it. No problem. I'll again do dry run and show you. Okay. So now let's quickly go and try to do installation of that. Helm install subchat global hyphen hyphen dry run. Oh, sorry. I did not give. Oh, okay. One more interesting thing. Now, if you see here, I think it's good. It's good that that error has come. So usually, what is the chart name here? Nginx. If I did not give my release name or chart name, it will ask you just hyphen hyphen generate name so that it will automatically generate a chart name for you. Right? That is one more new thing which I'm just trying to explain. So since I am already having the chart name here, so I'm just going to reuse it. If not, as I said, hyphen hyphen uh, you know give this like hyphen hyphen generate name with the name whatever you want to give, that it will. Now let's try to do dry run and see what it is, what are all the stuffs. You can see here in the notes.txt, right? I just defined the flow and all. That is the reason why you are able to see this, what it is doing and how it looks like and all. So same thing it is displaying here. So that's the one more explanation for node.txt. I hope you all are clear about that. So now let's see what it is installing. Now if you go here, let's go to the global values here, value.lab. So under the global section, what under I defined? Only environment and labels. Rest are specific to this particular template. These values will not be used or overridden by these charts, right? Now inside my template, what I'm doing, I'm installing the Nginx, right? If you go here, you can see here Nginx. So in my deployment, Nginx, that is what my release name, that is what it is replacing, and environment is production, that is what it is overriding by default. So that is what I have given here, value.global.environment. If it is not defined here, then you go and use the default, which is uh, oh, where it is deployment. Yeah, if it is not defined by default, use it dev. In my case, it is already defined as production, so it is just using the same thing. So that is what this is all about. And the label, of course. The label you are saying include Nginx label, that also I have defined here. That entire thing it is replaced. So this is done. Now in the dependency chart section, what I have given Redis and metrics. However, if you go to the metrics explorer before installing, I have given a condition. Only if value.global.metrics explorer is enabled, then only you install the metrics explorer or else don't, right? So if you see here in the value.global, these values, right, it is not under the global, only these are under the global. That is the reason why you see only Redis installation is done, whereas the metric explorer installation is not done. So with this, I hope I'm clear that subcharts cannot override the parent. However, they can just use the values under the parent only if it is defined under global variable. I mean the global and starts with global, within that whatever the variables are defined, right? I hope I am clear with this. As I said, I have made this as a public, okay, this repo. You can play around with this. What you can do is you can just put this stuff under this, and you can always try rendering it. It should work because now this metric explorer enabled is true and it is going here, right? What I'll do, I will now copy the same thing here, right, under the global, and I'll push it. So now I'll push it to the label section, right? Now let me try to run the same. Looks like, I think I missed syntax wise. I think I have to handle it. This is for this and this is for Redis. Just a second. Value dot metrics dot explorer, right? Global dot metrics explorer. So if I go here, value dot global dot metrics explorer enabled. Oh, okay, okay. Here is the thing. So if you go here, metrics explorer, what is the field name? I'll just put this inside metrics. So I have not defined this variable. I have defined this variable, right? So now what I'll do, I'll go to this. Okay, now it should. Bad character. Oh, okay. It doesn't handle hyphen. I'll do underscore. Here as well, I will do underscore. Now let's see. Yep, there you go. It's working. So that's about the global values. I hope I'm clear uh, about the concepts here. Again, if some things are not clear and you need any sort of an explanation, feel free to put a comment on my channel, and happy to clear those. So okay, let's try to summarize in the section 2 what we covered. In the section 2, we try to understand what are these subchats, like chats within a chat, and there we try to understand how to use the even the global how these global variables are coming into picture. So we understood key things here is a subchat is independently a chat itself. Okay, it is not dependent on the parent. However, the parent is dependent on the subchats for some deployment purpose or like some the application specific purpose and all. A subcharts cannot override the values of the parent. It can just refer the value of the parent only if it is defined under global section. So that is what we have learned. And if you need further details and all, always you can go back to this documentation and learn it. So that's all about this particular video. In the next series, we'll talk about the role of the public chats. Basically we'll take an example of either Grafana, Prometheus, or or even the Cert Manager, any publicly available chat, and how to play around with that public available chats. And then we'll also see in the upcoming videos about how we can use this Helm chat repository, how we can store your custom chats into a repository, what are the different options, I know all those things. So stay tuned, and please do subscribe to my channel and support me. Thank you so much, folks.